Technology represents the future. Where I'm going, I don't want to live in a world where there's no future. Scribe Rothschild. The Brotherhood of Steel is a post-war, technology-focused paramilitary order with chapters operating across the territory of the former United States. It was founded by rogue U.S. Army officer Captain Roger Maxson shortly after the Great War. The Brotherhood's core purpose is to preserve advanced technology and regulate its usage. This is because they believe humanity cannot be trusted with the means to destroy itself, and they acquire technology to prevent another apocalypse. Although they tend to be relatively isolationist, the Brotherhood has proved to be one of the most important organizations in the history of the wasteland, though their exact levels of power and influence have varied over time and by chapter. The Brotherhood has been featured in every game in the Fallout series, in one form or another. This video is a word-for-word reading of the Fallout Wiki article on the Brotherhood, and I am not its author, nor should I be credited for anything you hear in this video. I simply translated it in an audio format for the pleasure and enjoyment of the viewer. This video is an overview of the history of the Brotherhood as it appears throughout the series, and more videos will come out soon focusing on each individual chapter. Chapter 1. The Mariposa Rebellion. In 2076, the NBC, Nuclear, Biological, and Chemical Division of West Tech, an American corporation, achieved breakthrough results in the Pan-Immunity Virion project. The United States Defense Department, fearing international espionage, moved a military team under the command of Colonel Robert Spindell and Captain Roger Maxson onto the site to secure and oversee the project, now dubbed the FEV, Forced Evolutionary Virus, project. On January 7, 2077, all FEV research was moved to the newly constructed Mariposa military base to commence testing of the virus on human subjects. The security team was transferred to the newly constructed base as well, to provide protection for the research going on within the facility. They were not informed of the nature of the research. The forced evolution virus originated from the Pan-Immunity Virion project, a project originally dedicated to discovering a cure for the new plague, an infectious disease and socially transmitted plague which first arose in the 2050s within the United States. It was established in September 2073 in response to aggressive use of biochemical weapons by China. In order to combat the newest biological weapons, the decision was made to create a viral defense that would alter uninfected DNA to render it immune to standard viral infection. The situation unraveled shortly before October 10, 2077. The soldiers stationed at Mariposa discovered the fact that the scientists under their care were performing experiments with the forced evolutionary virus on military prisoners. The revelation prompted a nervous breakdown in Colonel Spindell, who locked himself in his office. Captain Maxson was the only officer left to handle the deteriorating situation. Soldiers were screaming for blood, and the whole situation was at risk of devolving into a bloodbath. On October 12th, when Maxson had to step in to prevent one of his subordinates from killing a member of the science team, he ordered interrogations of the science team under his authority as acting commander. He hoped to prevent a full mutiny by offering his troops a semblance of justice. The first scientist was brought before Maxson a day later, on October 13th. Chief Researcher Robert Anderson explained that human experiments at the facility were sanctioned by the government. He outlined the program to the captain, emphasizing the fact that it was the government that ordered it. When Maxson refused to believe him, the scientist lost his nerve and started screaming how he was just following orders and that he was a military man, just like Maxson. The captain shot him in response. He rationalized it as trying to prevent a full-scale mutiny, but even he did not believe it. The killing of Robert Anderson effectively established Maxson as the leader of the rebellion. His position was further reinforced just 2 days later on October 15th, when he attempted to speak to Colonel Spindell through the door of his office. It soon became clear that the colonel had lost touch with reality, so Maxson and several of his men broke down the door just in time to hear the colonel apologize and shoot himself. Subsequent scientist interrogations invariably ended in executions. Aaron Shellman held out the longest by October 18th, finally convincing the captain that the experiments were really ordered by the government with her detailed account. On October 20th, 2077, Captain Maxson declared his unit in full secession from the United States over the radio, attempting to force the government to respond to the situation at Mariposa. No response came. A day later, he ordered the families of soldiers under his command to take shelter within the facility. On October the 23rd, 2077, the Great War struck as Maxson was halfway through, prying the story from head researcher Leon von Felden. The facility lost contact with the outside world as nuclear weapons started to drop. Spared the nuclear devastation, Mariposa protected the inhabitants from nuclear fallout flooding the wasteland. Fearing that China would soon make up for the oversight, on October 24th, Maxson ordered his soldiers and their families to prepare to vacate the base the next day. On October 25th, Sergeant Plattner volunteered to take atmospheric readings outside the base. Reporting no significant amounts of radiation in the atmosphere, final preparations for the exodus were undertaken. On October 26th, Maxson ordered the remains of the scientists to be buried in the wastes outside the base. A day later, on October 27th, former U.S. servicemen and their families left the base under the lead of Captain Roger Maxson, heading for the Lost Hills government bunker in the south. In November, a few weeks later, war refugees arrived at the bunker. The people suffered casualties along the way, as while the soldiers were protected by T-51 power armor, their families had no armor to speak of. Marauders that attacked the caravan quickly learned to target the unprotected civilians. Though the attackers paid with 2 lives for every one they took, many were lost, including Roger Maxson's wife, but not his teenage son. Several soldiers broke off during the exodus as well, led by Sergeant Dennis Allen. Ignoring warnings from Captain Maxson and defying the group's will, Allen's faction separated from the convoy in order to excavate the remains of the West Tech research facility using their power armor. They were never heard from again. Around 2151, the Brotherhood sent out knights to seek out Allen's group or its remains. All they found were desolate ruins. The Exodus survivors claimed the Lost Hills bunker as their own. The refugees expanded and adapted it to fit their own needs, becoming a bastion of technology in a world that has lost centuries of technological development overnight. Chapter 2. Foundation of the Brotherhood and Expansion in Appalachia. Using surviving satellite connections, Maxson reached out across the continent, broadcasting a request for contact. By chance, Maxson found an old friend in Appalachia, Lieutenant Elizabeth Taggarty of the U.S. Army Rangers. Although initially hesitant to trust him due to the public declaration of secession, she gambled and left the channel open. As Maxson revealed the depth of atrocities perpetrated by the United States government, Taggarty's faith in the system was shaken, then dismantled. Following the winter spent at Camp Venture, she joined Maxson's banner. Witnessing how people around him slowly succumbed to depression, Captain Maxson formulated a new ideology for the survivors. It took him years to create it, replacing the tarnished stars and stripes with new symbols, new ranks, and new ideas to replace the ones scorched in nuclear fire. They would provide meaning for people before they became lost in the depths of despair after losing their friends, family, and their entire world. Although some under his command, particularly Lieutenant Taggarty, were skeptical of his plans, Maxson believed that the way forward lay in new traditions and a new mythology, free of the burden of the past. He also believed that it would prevent any surviving politicians from exercising their authority over former American soldiers, especially those with an agenda that involved burning Americans on the funeral pyre of the regime. By June 20th, 2082, all members under his command switched over to using Brotherhood ranks and practices. The Brotherhood kept growing in New California, welcoming into its ranks a National Guard unit that was formerly stationed near Mariposa. They acquired several bunkers and sent expeditions as far as the Mojave Wasteland, gathering intelligence and new recruits. As the Brotherhood in New California developed, so did its sister organization in Appalachia under Paladin Taggarty. Although she showed a bias towards candidates with a military background while building up the ranks, she eventually understood Roger Maxson's vision and continued to expand and develop the organization using Camp Venture as a training outpost. Despite initial resistance to the new rank system by the rest in her outfit, the new ideas offered by Maxson eventually took root and were accepted. In Appalachia, the Brotherhood's insistence on acquiring munitions for their fighting against mutants led to ruffled feathers, especially with the responders prior to the Christmas flood in December 2082. However, they eventually found a common tongue, standing together during the Battle of Huntersville in May 2086. Although the Brotherhood sustained losses, it prevailed. This coincided with the announcement of a new mandate by Roger Maxson at Lost Hills to gather, record, and save the collective knowledge of mankind for future generations, to act as a catalyst for the rebirth of civilization in time. Some in Appalachia responded to this new policy with enthusiasm, others with grudging acceptance, and yet others, like Hank Madigan, left the Brotherhood to join the responders. The new mission quickly took a back seat, however, as the Appalachian Brotherhood encountered the Scorch Beasts and the Scorched in the Cranberry Bog. Conferring with Maxson's ace researcher at Lost Hills, Scribe Haley Takano, the Brotherhood in Appalachia quickly calculated that the Scorch Beasts represented a potential extinction event for humanity. Lost Hills supplied a number of designs and weapon schematics to help stem the tide, including a sonic generator and an automated research program. Taggarty pleaded with Maxson to grant her team permission to use nuclear weapons against the Scorch Beasts, but was forbidden by him because he found the concept of using nuclear weapons, even to help fight the Scorch Beasts, to be too morally abhorrent after their world was destroyed by nukes. By the 2090 S, communication between Lost Hills and Appalachia was on steady decline due to failing Old World communication infrastructure. Before being cut off, Maxson ordered Taggarty to hold the tide and prescribed the use of nuclear weapons. Eventually, the communications failed entirely, separating Lost Hills from Appalachia. The chapter in Appalachia fought on, trying to destroy the Scorch Beasts through attrition, but by 2093, their numbers dwindled to the point where they were forced to close down Camp Venture, their first base, and focus their remaining forces at Fort Defiance and Thunder Mountain Power Plant. Declining support from the responders and the constant fighting just to stem the tide of the Scorched and their masters took their toll, preventing the Brotherhood from completing the automated research program at Vault-Tec University supplied to them by Takano. Eventually, the Brotherhood launched Operation Touchdown. This last-ditch effort was launched in January 2095 and briefly stemmed the tide at the cost of the entire strike force, which included Knight Moreno and Paladin Taggarty. Ultimately, the Brotherhood in Appalachia was wiped out in their last stand at Fort Defiance and Thunder Mountain on August 18, 1995, marking the end of the original Brotherhood in Appalachia. However, by 2103, a small group of reinforcements arrived on their way from Lost Hills to examine various centers of technology across the country, expand the Brotherhood across the East Coast, and find out what happened to Taggarty. Known as the Brotherhood First Expeditionary Force, they were led by Layla Romani and Daniel Shin and were to set up base in Fort Atlas in Appalachia. The team also had a scribe named Odessa Valdez. While Maxon's motive was sincere, wishing to find out what happened to his friend Taggarty, Romani became certain the Council of Elders had an ulterior motive, to remove her influence and meddling, as she would often argue over their ways. Along their hike across the country, the expedition found a town under threat by raiders. Wanting to assist them, Romani and Shin agreed to providing the townsfolk with weapons to help defend them. Unfortunately, the raiders were able to steal the guns and kill the townsfolk. During the assault, the Brotherhood lost one of their valued members, Alan Connors, and obtained two young refugee siblings who lost their parents, Marcia and Maximo Leone. This incident would set off a division between Romani and Shin, with Shin wanting himself and Romani to stand trial with the Council of Elders. Upon arriving in Appalachia, the group was dismayed to discover that Taggarty's Brotherhood was wiped out by the Scorch Beasts, with Vernon Dodge being the only known survivor. Romani decided that in order to establish the Brotherhood's presence in the region, the organization needed to cooperate with Appalachia's other factions, particularly the settlement of Foundation. Shin became skeptical of Romani's choices, particularly her desire to delay the re-establishment of contact with the elders in Lost Hills. Romani and Shin dealt with numerous conflicts, including Meg Groberg's raiders, battles against super mutants, and a plan to infect the water cycle with FEV orchestrated by a driven scientist. During a mission to explore an enclave research facility, Romani, feeling that the elders from Lost Hills were a hindrance in her ideals of establishing the Brotherhood as a peacekeeping force, destroyed the radio transmitter, which infuriated Shin. As a result, there is no confirmation of the Brotherhood in Appalachia re-establishing contact with the Brotherhood in California, as well as their status post-2105. Chapter 3. Strife. In 2135, Roger Maxon died of cancer. Already a legendary figure to the Brotherhood, he was essentially deified as the founder and deliverer. His son, Maxon II, replaced him as the High Elder, while his grandson, John Maxon, joined the Paladin caste, showing great promise. Around 2141, the Brotherhood ceased admitting new members from the outside, relying solely on their natural growth for increasing their numbers. The Brotherhood was a major power in the region at this point, firmly exercising their control on the land surrounding their bunker and forming trade relations with the neighboring towns, especially the hub. However, the focus on hard sciences gave in to the detriment of humanities, history in particular. This decline in soft sciences eventually led to some initiates of the youngest generations having no idea who Roger Maxon was. In 2150, they clashed with the newly reformed Vipers. The battles intensified in subsequent years, culminating in the death of High Elder Maxon II in 2155. John Maxon's father expected the raiders to break formation and flee when faced with Brotherhood warriors clad in powered armor, but did not account for their religious ferocity. A poisoned arrow nicked him when his helmet was off, and he died within hours. John Maxon was promoted to the Elder Council, while Rhombus was tasked with conducting a campaign of extermination against the Vipers. The Paladins tracked down and wiped out almost all of their members within the span of a month. A handful of Vipers were able to flee north and east into the mountain range, while small groups continued to exist and raid in New California, they never regained their full power. Both Rhombus and John Maxson would eventually ascend to leadership roles, with John Maxson becoming the High Elder in 2159 and promoting Rhombus to the role of head paladin. During the campaign, the Brotherhood sent a few scouts and emissaries to the Hub to track down Viper's members, and from these beginnings, the Hub and the Brotherhood began full trade relations. Caravans had delivered to the Brotherhood before, but not long after the destruction of the Vipers, caravan trains ran directly from the Hub to the Brotherhood on a regular basis. While the situation remained peaceful and prosperous, issues would develop between the Hub and the Brotherhood from time to time. In the late 2150s, the water merchants of the Hub attempted to barter a large quantity of water for a weapons stockpile. Although the Brotherhood turned down the offer, the merchants attempted to take the weapons regardless. The thieves were caught, but the Brotherhood elders voted down a retaliatory expedition. In 2161, the Brotherhood discovered the presence of a new enemy. In October, a group of knights on a patrol in the Badlands discovered a dead super mutant. After examining the creature, Head Scribe Vree determined that it was sterile, but also notes that there must have been a central location that created these mutants. The Elder Council, fearing a potential invasion, enacted several security decrees, including a moratorium on training new recruits until the threat passed. The Elders also sent out several scouts north and east into the Badlands. Only one returned from the east, reporting an encounter with 20 super mutants, and none at all returned from the north. The Council could not reach an agreement on how to act. Even as Hub merchant caravans started disappearing in the northern wastes, the Elders refused to act until they were fully certain that there was an army massing in the northern mountains. The impasse was broken by the arrival of the Vault Dweller. Having rescued a Brotherhood initiate from bandits in the Hub, the Vault Dweller visited the Brotherhood and accepted the mission to the Glow, to recover the disc belonging to Sergeant Dennis Allen, to learn the fate of the Splinter faction from the Mariposa Rebellion. The Vault Dweller surprised everyone by surviving and returning with the artifact. They became the first outsider to join the Brotherhood in nearly 20 years. The Brotherhood shared what knowledge they had and some of their advanced technology with the Vault Dweller, allowing them to seek out the Master and destroy him in the Boneyard. Following the death of the super mutant leader, the Brotherhood further aided the Vault Dweller's quest, sending a team of crack assault paladins to storm Mariposa. Following the destruction of the Unity, the Brotherhood aided other human settlements to drive the mutants away, with minimal loss of life on both sides of the conflict. The Brotherhood remained out of the power structure for a time, becoming a major research and development house by reintroducing advanced technology into New California at a slow pace. The wise guidance of Rhombus arguably brought the Brotherhood to the zenith of its power. The Brotherhood had good relations with the developing New California Republic, to the point that one of the states of the Federation was named after the founder of the Brotherhood, Maxson. However, Lost Hills was never incorporated into the NCR. Over the years, the Brotherhood grew confident in its status as the sole source of advanced technology left to mankind, and allowed its prominence and influence to wane, growing stagnant. This stagnancy made them unable to deal with a technologically superior enclave when the Brotherhood learned of their existence circa 2240. In order to learn more about them, the Brotherhood reactivated a network of outposts in Northern California to observe enclave activity. Thanks to their low profile, they achieved practical anonymity, even in the populous San Francisco. Chapter 4. Expeditions to the East. In the year 2254, sometime after the destruction of the West Coast Enclave by the Chosen One, the Brotherhood's ruling council, based in the Lost Hills bunker in Southern California, decided to send a contingent of soldiers all the way to the East Coast with three important objectives. First, to scour the ruins of Washington, D.C., once the nation's capital, to recover any and all advanced technology. Second, to investigate the reports of super mutant activity in the area, and third, to reestablish contact with the Midwestern Brotherhood of Steel and return them under Lost Hills command. And so a small but hardened contingent of Brotherhood of Steel soldiers, led by an idealistic paladin named Owen Lyons, and accompanied by his friend and technological advisor, Reginald Rothschild, as well as his 3-year-old daughter Sarah, set out from the Lost Hills bunker in California and began the long trek east to what was once Washington, D.C. On their way to the capital wasteland, the Brotherhood's forces came across the ruins of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. A truly chaotic city, it was full of gangs, raiders, slavers, and many other kinds of horrors, all freely wandered, terrorizing the few innocent survivors. In a single night, the Brotherhood swept through the city from their staging area at Mount Wash and eliminated any resident who put up a fight. Lyons's contingent left the city with approximately 20 children in tow who would later be initiated into the Brotherhood. The Scourge. Lyons's forces suffered only one casualty, Paladin Ishmael Ashur, who was buried in rubble during the fighting and presumed dead. When the group finally arrived in the capital wasteland, it did not take long before they made some remarkable discoveries. The Pentagon, as they had feared, was largely destroyed. But its sublevels remained intact and contained enough pre-war technology and weaponry to keep Lyons's forces going indefinitely once the defense robots were destroyed. But there was something else as well. Liberty Prime, a technological marvel that, if restored, could help the Brotherhood of Steel rebuild strength and reputation that had been declining steadily for years. The discovery was significant enough to earn Paladin Lyons a battlefield promotion to Elder and a new directive from his superiors in Southern California to establish a new, permanent Brotherhood base in the capital wasteland and continue the search for any other advanced technology hidden in the former capital city's ruins. Lyons accepted his new post gladly and founded the Citadel, built into and beneath the ruins of the Pentagon. It was a fortress the Brotherhood of Steel desperately needed, and one they rushed to fortify thanks to their other great discovery in the capital wasteland. Super mutants also existed on the East Coast. It did not take long for Elder Lyons and the Brotherhood of Steel to find the super mutants, mostly because they didn't have to look. The super mutants found them. In the capital wasteland, particularly in the urban ruins of downtown D.C., the super mutants were simply too numerous to be avoided. That is why, for the people of the capital wasteland, the arrival of the Brotherhood of Steel became the answer to their prayers. Scattered, hungry, and largely disorganized, they had lived with the constant threat of death or capture by the super mutants for as long as they could remember. Elder Lyons and his knights and paladins changed all that. For the first time, the super mutant tide was stemmed and forced back into the ruins of Washington. The D.C. ruins remained under super mutant control and uninhabitable, but the number of incursions against the outlying wasteland settlements dropped significantly. Life was still harsh and unfair, but at least now the people of the capital wasteland had a fighting chance, and they had Elder Lyons and the Brotherhood to thank for that. Fighting the super mutants, or simply keeping them at bay, may have been enough for the region's innocent wastelanders, but for the Brotherhood, too many questions remained. How had these local super mutants been created? Were they related to the super mutants of New California? Why were they capturing the people of the capital wasteland? Where were they taking them? Finding these answers would ultimately become Owen Lyons's obsession. The years passed, but not in a way anyone had foreseen. Indeed, the Brotherhood of Steel's importance to the people of the capital wasteland was not something that Lyons had ever expected, nor was it something his Brotherhood superiors back in California cared at all about. Their newest elder had a clearly defined mission to acquire advanced technologies in and around the ruins of Washington, D.C. Finding the source of the super-mutant threat and destroying it was important too, of course. But it was assumed that the Brotherhood could easily eliminate the super-mutants and their source fairly quickly. For the Brotherhood leadership, Elder Lyons's prime objective was, first and foremost, the acquisition and preservation of pre-Great War technology. The super-mutants were his second priority. This was the subject of every communication from the Brotherhood of Steel leadership in California. But Elder Owen Lyons had another priority, one he considered more important than his original directive or any orders received since: the protection of the innocent people of the capital wasteland. And so Lyons sent word to his superiors that he would continue his search for technology when he was damned good and ready, and would not sacrifice the people who had come to rely on the bravery and strength of the Brotherhood of Steel. The Californian corridors of the Brotherhood's Lost Hills headquarters erupted in rumor and speculation. Had Owen Lyons gone native, putting the needs of the people of D.C. above those of the Brotherhood itself? Or had a Brotherhood elder finally exhibited the selfless behavior that should serve as a model for the entire order? Caught in the middle, the ruling elders made the only decision they could. They would still recognize Elder Lyons as a leader of the Brotherhood of Steel and the Citadel as their D.C. headquarters. But all material and personnel support from the West Coast was completely cut off. If Lyons wanted to pursue his own agenda on the East Coast, he would do it alone. So that is what Lyons did. The East Coast division of the Brotherhood of Steel, headquartered in the Citadel, became its own entity, like the Midwestern Brotherhood of Steel. Keep its laws and customs, but no more affiliated with the original Brotherhood of Steel on the West Coast, and completely independent. Most of Elder Lyons' soldiers supported his dedication to the welfare of the people of the capital wasteland and were proud of their leader's commitment to honor and heroism. But there were those who voiced their opposition, loudly and aggressively. They believed that by abandoning the Brotherhood of Steel's primary mission of acquiring lost technologies, Elder Lyons had abandoned the very values that defined the order itself. One night, the dissenters, under the leadership of Paladin Kasdan, departed from the Citadel, absconding with weapons, power armor, and other pieces of advanced technology and equipment. This was, without question, Owen Lyons' darkest hour. He had become a man of compassion and understanding, and could not help but sympathize with those who had left. He had abandoned the Brotherhood's primary mission. He recognized that, and took full responsibility. Some of the knights and paladins who left had been his brothers in arms for years. Together they had shared victory and loss, pain and elation. But to those soldiers loyal to Elder Lyons, this dereliction of duty and theft of technology was an act of cowardice and treason. Lyons was left with little choice. He branded the dissenters outcasts, traitors to the Brotherhood of Steel. It was a name they would ultimately wear like a badge of honor, proud of the distance it put between themselves and Lyons's soldier sycophants. Liberty Prime easily clears the way through all Enclave forces, clearing a path for the Pride. Once inside the Jefferson Memorial, the Lone Wanderer and Sentinel Lyons make their way through the last of the Enclave forces and eventually confront Colonel Autumn. The Lone Wanderers can choose the ultimate outcome, but regardless, the two make it to the control room, whereupon Dr. Lee tells them that something has damaged the purifier, that it must be activated now, and that the current radiation levels would kill whoever enters the room to carry out the activation. The outcome here is also dependent on the choices of the Lone Wanderer, and either someone goes inside to activate the purifier, only surviving if the broken steel add-on is already installed, or no one goes in, and everyone within the room dies. Likewise, at this point, the lone wanderer can secretly use the FEV to poison the water. With the purifier up and running, the Brotherhood takes control and begins distributing the clean water throughout the wasteland, with Scribe Bigsley overseeing operations. Also during this time, the Brotherhood begins systematically destroying all remaining Enclave outposts in the wasteland, with Liberty Prime spearheading the assault, even destroying Raven Rock if the Lone Wanderer had not done so already. During this time, the Brotherhood also begin to reverse engineer the Enclave's plasma weaponry, removing that advantage for their enemies. 2 weeks after the assault on Project Purity, the Lone Wanderer awakens in the Citadel's clinic and is greeted by Elder Lyons. Scribe Rothschild updates the Lone Wanderer on the current situation on the war between the Brotherhood and the Enclave, then directing the Lone Wanderer to journey to Rockland to help with a Brotherhood attack on an Enclave communications facility. The Lone Wanderer makes it to the Rockland car tunnels and assists Paladin Tristan and a squad of Brotherhood members and Liberty Prime in the attack. The Enclave forces are decimated, and Liberty Prime manages to literally punch a hole through the Enclave's defenses, giving the Brotherhood an access point. Then, Liberty Prime detects a signal and orders the Brotherhood forces to retreat. Soon after, the area is destroyed, along with Liberty Prime, by an orbital bombardment from a weapon satellite ordered by the Enclave, leaving the Brotherhood shaken. Paladin Tristan orders the Lone Wanderer to lead a squad of Brotherhood members to find out what had happened. At the Citadel, the Brotherhood members discuss the orbital assault. Moments before the attack, they had been crushing any Enclave resistance, and now they have lost their biggest weapon, and are facing a new weapon they know nothing about. In addition, it is certain that the Enclave will counterattack, especially since the Brotherhood was the one to instigate the war. When the Lone Wanderer comes back from the Rockland satellite station, they deliver some encrypted data for Scribe Rothschild to decrypt, who is aghast at all the hard work that went into restoring Liberty Prime, only to see it all go to waste. Paladin Tristan then sends the Lone Wanderer to the old Olney Powerworks for a Tesla coil, so the Brotherhood can recreate Liberty Prime's Liberty Laser, the only effective defense the Brotherhood had against the Enclave's vertibirds. The Lone Wanderer does so with a prototype device made by the Brotherhood, meant to jam the signal the Enclave uses to control Deathclaws. The Lone Wanderer makes it to Olney Powerworks, encountering many Deathclaws, Enclave forces, and robots. But eventually, they make it to the center with a functioning Tesla coil in the middle. With the Tesla coil in hand, the Lone Wanderer makes it back to the Citadel and hands it over to the Brotherhood scientists there, and is then ordered to make it to the Adams Air Force Base via the Presidential Metro. When the Lone Wanderer enters the Air Force Base, they open up a supply crate containing ammo and a working Tesla cannon. When opening the crate, the Brotherhood receives a signal to commence attacking the Air Force Base, so the Lone Wanderer can make their way through the Enclave forces and open the way to the mobile base crawler. The player character makes it to the top of the mobile base crawler and has a choice to either launch the Enclave's last orbital ballistic payload on either the mobile base crawler, setting back the Enclave in the capital wasteland severely, or on the Citadel, thus devastating the Brotherhood of Steel. Once outside, a Brotherhood squad, led by Sarah Lyons if she survived Project Purity, pilots a stolen vertibird to take the Lone Wanderer back to the Citadel. In canon, the Lone Wanderer destroys the MBC, and the Enclave is permanently removed as a threat from the capital wasteland. The East Coast Brotherhood moves on back to normal, taking out the mutants and raiders. With the Brotherhood in control of Project Purity, providing access to clean, purified water. One vertibird and vast amounts of technology and equipment acquired from the enclave after the successful war, and access to local recruitment and manpower, the East Coast Brotherhood is effectively in control of the capital wasteland. The original Brotherhood, however, in California, is more weakened than before by 2281. Chapter 5. Interim and the Fight Against the Institute. The key blow to the organization came with the death of Owen Lyons, circa 2278, and the loss of now Elder Sarah Lyons later that same year. With the seat of power emptied, the remaining Brotherhood members elected multiple ineffectual leaders. Meanwhile, the adolescent squire Arthur Maxon matured into a capable warrior and tactician, eventually defeating Shepard, the new war boss of the capital wasteland, super mutants, in 2282. This feat earned him a provisional leadership position. In fact, this position was bestowed by West Coast elders, who revealed that they still monitored their errant brethren. Maxon's position solidified in 2283 when he negotiated a treaty with the Brotherhood outcasts, bringing them back into the fold and reforming the entire organization, abandoning Lyons's doctrine. Lyons' Brotherhood became a distant memory as Maxon restored the original mission of the Brotherhood of Steel. While some members found this distasteful and left, many still remained, proud to serve a refocused Brotherhood. Maxon became leader of the Brotherhood's eastern branch, setting it on a new, more authoritarian path. Around this same time, the Brotherhood began constructing a massive airship known as the Prydwen at the conquered former Enclave facility of Adams Air Force Base. The ship began full operation in 2282. After discovering advanced signals originating from the Institute, the Prydwen traveled to the Commonwealth. The Brotherhood established its headquarters at Boston Airport. The vessel serves multiple roles for the Brotherhood, including those of aircraft carrier, command center, clinic, personnel quarters, equipment maintenance bay, and research facility. In plotting a course to find, access, and destroy the Institute, Elder Maxon determined the first initiative to be repairing Liberty Prime back to working order. Chapter 6. The New California Republic Against the Brotherhood. Treat. The roots of the war lie in the stagnation of the Brotherhood of Steel, between the eldership of Rhombus and the emergence of the New California Republic as the dominant power in New California. Confronted with an expanding nation-state, the Brotherhood adopted a reactionary policy, attempting to seize any advanced pre-war technology, limiting and controlling access to such technologies throughout the region, particularly energy weapons. The NCR refused to accept the policy the Brotherhood attempted to impose on it, which resulted in a military confrontation. By stark contrast, in the early 2240s and prior, the Brotherhood had good relations with the quickly developing New California Republic to the point that one of the states of the Federation was named after the founder of the Brotherhood, Maxon. However, Lost Hills was never incorporated into the NCR. They even had an outpost in the NCR's capital of Shady Sands. However, aforementioned policies later instituted by the Brotherhood made it certain that by the late 2250s or early 2260s, military clashes between the Republic and the Brotherhood were already commonplace and consuming lives. This gave way to a long and bloody war that took a considerable toll on the NCR Army and the Republic itself, as well as the Brotherhood. During the early years of the war, the Brotherhood was able to inflict heavy losses on the NCR, achieving numerous victories and successes in the opening stages of the conflict. It was even written by John Diley in Van Buren that, for years, the war waged on and was considered a victory for the Brotherhood of Steel. However, despite enjoying a huge advantage in individual training and equipment, as the conflict dragged on, the Brotherhood was unable to match the new California Republic's manpower and ability to replace losses, and the tactical and strategic flexibility it provided. Eventually, after decades of fighting, the Brotherhood was forced into retreat and hiding. At least 4 chapter bunkers were self-destructed by the Brotherhood in a last-ditch attempt to deny them to the NCR. But the NCR military would suffer greatly for these victories. Although hostilities continued in New California, the NCR had begun to recover and focused its efforts on expanding eastwards into the Mojave Wasteland and Hoover Dam. In 2277, Elder Lyons mentions turmoil in that the Brotherhood of Steel has been struggling for years, both here and back home. The subsequent occupation of the dam in 2273 brought it into conflict with the Mojave chapter of the Brotherhood, which operated unrestricted in the region for years. After 2 years of guerrilla skirmishes instigated by the Brotherhood, the NCR launched Operation Sunburst to neutralize the chapter in a single pitched battle at Helios 1. The indefensible nature of the solar power plant, inexperienced soldiers, limited manpower, and poor tactical decisions made by Elder Elijah were ruthlessly exploited by the Republic and its commanders. Concentrating a force that outnumbered the Brotherhood defense by a factor of between 15 and 20 to 1, the operation was a tremendous success. The Brotherhood was routed, having lost half its manpower, including over half of its veteran knights and paladins. The survivors retreated to Hidden Valley through the McCullough Mountains and enacted a strict lockdown. As they hid, the Republic increased its military presence in the Mojave fivefold. By the 2290 ES, the West Coast Brotherhood of Steel had ended their exile and has returned to being active on the surface in New California. This being due to the NCR's waning influence in the region following the destruction of Shady Sands. In 2296, the West Coast Brotherhood is reinforced by and is now seemingly under the directive of the East Coast Brotherhood. The Pridwin arrives at one of the Brotherhood New California chapter's airfields and training facilities in California. This results in the integration of the two forces, with the West Coast providing knights from the East Coast squires. The group had traveled all the way across the continent from the Commonwealth. Their initial objective, as stated by Elder Cleric Quintus, was to locate a crucial item in the possession of an Enclave deserter. The Brotherhood sends several search teams into the wilds. The search for this artifact would once again reignite open hostilities between the Brotherhood of Steel and remnants of the new California Republic in the Boneyard, led by the Fire Mother, Lee Moldover. The NCR forces under Moldover were also looking to acquire the artifact. She had heard of Siggy Wilzig, a defector from the Enclave who had managed to create a working cold fusion reactor technology. She would offer him safe harbor with the NCR in exchange for it, in the hopes of using the technology to restore power to all of Los Angeles. When this artifact known as cold fusion made its way into the NCR's possession by the way of Lucy McLean, it forced the Brotherhood to take action. Their forces proceed to acquire the town of Philly to use as a forward operating and supply base. The Brotherhood flag was raised in the center of town, marking one of the first known territorial expansions of the West Coast Brotherhood in decades. Battle of the Griffith Observatory. From the settlement of Philly, the Brotherhood traveled to the Griffith Observatory, which acted as the NCR's stronghold and headquarters in the area. The first wave of vertibirds lands, its troops amidst heavy anti-aircraft fire from the NCR remnants. A vicious battle ensues in the facility's courtyard as Brotherhood and NCR soldiers clash at extremely close quarters. Both sides take several casualties during this period. The NCR defenders put up a valiant defense, but the Brotherhood's forces, spearheaded by its armored units, were eventually able to breach the front doors of the facility. From there, they seemingly split into two groups, 3 knights along with Maximus and others headed for the artifact, while others, including Dane, continued to engage NCR defenders within the observatory. Despite interference from the Ghoul, which increased casualties for the Brotherhood, they were able to eventually secure the facility and the cold fusion reactor, seemingly wiping out the NCR remnant in Los Angeles. But not before Moldover was able to activate the cold fusion generator, providing unlimited power to the Los Angeles and Shady Sands ruins, which, due to the Prydwen, now seems to be under the influence of the Brotherhood. Although now dead, Lee Moldaver was able to achieve her 200-year-long goal of introducing clean, unlimited energy to the world, a technology that undoubtedly would have changed the outcome of the resource wars had it been allowed to be introduced. This action saw the lights in post-war Los Angeles reignite for the first time in centuries, with the cold fusion generator feeding unlimited power to the Boneyard and Shady Sands ruins, which, due to the Prydwen and the Remnant's destruction, now seems to be under the influence of the Brotherhood. The Brotherhood was able to achieve its goal and acquire the artifact as had been ordered by the East Coast Brass. The cold fusion technology was described as being extremely important. Whoever controls it will rule the wastes. These events also seem to have brought about a further restructuring of the West Coast Brotherhood. One of their leaders, Elder Cleric Quintus, admitted that the West Coast Brotherhood has lost its way in its isolation, before reminiscing about the time when they ruled the wasteland on the West Coast. He added that power must be taken and not given. Quintus initiated plans for the rebirth of the Brotherhood on the West Coast with him as its leader. And that's all for today, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let us finish with a quote. "Words have power, Lizzie. They build identity. They take on a meaning if you keep using them, even if it didn't exist to begin with. It was the knights and scribes after the fall of Rome that protected what was left of Western civilization. So, we are the new knights, and our role is similar. But we'll need more than names. We'll need new traditions, our own, mythology. Something people can believe to their core." Roger Maxson to Elizabeth Taggarty about the Brotherhood.